Why was she always overlooked? Why did no one see past the quiet exterior, the worn jeans, the calloused hands? She looked like she belonged on a farm, not a battlefield. Faded denim, scuffed work boots, a simple ponytail. To most, she was just another small-town ranch hand who slipped into the shooting range on cold Wyoming mornings. But beneath that quiet, Maya Chen carried something heavier than a rifle case. A past, a weight, a silence that no one could break. Her pickup truck rattled down Highway 25, tires kicking up brown dust as the Wind River Mountains rose ahead, jagged and eternal. December air bit at her cheeks, the kind of cold that carved into bone. She rolled down her window slightly, breathing it in. Out here, the air was sharp, clean. It didn't choke like the dust of Kandahar or burn like the black smoke that once poured across a valley she never wanted to remember. She made this drive every Wednesday for 8 months, always early, always alone. It wasn't habit, it was survival. Crowds meant questions. Crowds meant eyes watching too closely. Out here, when the range was quiet, she could lose herself in routine. A rifle, a target, a breath. In those small rituals, she found something like peace. At 26, Maya looked older. Not by years, but by nights. The kind of nights that left shadows under her brown eyes. Nights filled with muffled radios, heartbeats counted between distant gunshots, decisions that carved scars into her soul. She carried those nights still, tucked under the calm, practical surface. When she parked outside Copper Canyon Range, Pete Garrison was already waiting. The old veteran leaned on the doorframe of the range office, coffee steaming in his hand. His beard was streaked gray, cap pulled low, but his voice still carried that dry battlefield humor. "Morning, Maya," he called. "Cold enough for you." She shifted her rifle case from one shoulder, nodded slightly. "Just right." Her grandfather's words flickered through memory, as clear as the first time she heard them. A rifle is not just a tool, little one. It's responsibility made manifest. She carried those words as if they were carved into the wood of the rifle itself. Inside the lot, a new SUV pulled in, shining like it had never touched dirt. 4 college boys spilled out, laughter echoing too loud against the quiet. Expensive rifles, brand new camouflage, the confidence of kids who had never been tested. At the center was Jake Morrison, tall, blonde, hair styled like it mattered, voice already filling the cold air. "I'm telling you, Tyler, it's all about the equipment. My dad's Barrett could put down an elk at 900 yards easy." His friend Tyler, awkward in glasses too big for his face, nodded nervously. Another, Connor, stumbled under the weight of a rifle case that looked too heavy for him. Jake's voice rose again, dripping with arrogance. "Jake, been shooting since he was 10, Connor announced proudly. "His family owns half the hunting lodges in the county." Maya pulled her cap lower, hopping to slip by unseen, but Jake caught her. "Excuse me, miss," he called, voice edged with fake politeness. "Are you here for the beginner's safety course? My buddy Tyler could use some company in remedial class." A chuckle rippled through his little crowd. Maya met his eyes, not with anger, not with embarrassment, just steady, quiet eyes that had once stared across dust storms and broken villages. Eyes that had locked onto a Taliban rifle barrel and never blinked. "I'll manage," she said simply. Inside, Linda Garrison smiled at her from behind the counter, a woman who knew without asking. "Your usual lane, honey." Lane 20, farthest from the noise, always the farthest. She unpacked her grandfather's Remington 700. The wood was smooth, worn by decades of hands. No sleek carbon fiber, no glossy scopes, just the rifle of a man who had once carried both wisdom and silence. She set it down gently, as if even now it carried his presence. Pete's voice rang across the speakers. "Range is hot. Maximum distance 1200 today." Laughter carried from Jake's lane. 1200. My grandfather could do that blindfolded with iron sights. The day stretched into rhythm. For Maya, every shot was meditation. Shoulder, breath, squeeze. a sequence drilled not from manuals but from necessity, a sequence that had once kept her alive when nothing else could. The rifle cracked, the sound echoing off the canyon walls. Each shot tightened the chaos inside her chest, held it in place just long enough for her to breathe again. But from the other end, frustration grew. Jake's voice cracked with complaints. "This scope is off, must be. No way I'm shooting this badly." Another miss. Another curse. Another attempt to blame the rifle, the wind, the earth itself. Maya barely noticed until the voice of Dr. Marcus Webb drifted over. He walked slowly, M1 Garand cradled like an old friend. 63 years old, careful in every movement but sharp-eyed still. He watched Maya as she reloaded. "How are you feeling today?" he asked quietly. She didn't look up. "Better." He nodded, knowing progress when he saw it. Sometimes better was the most anyone could hope for. Hours passed. Jake's bravado unraveled. The more he failed, the louder he became. Tyler quietly outshot him, and that only deepened his frustration. By mid-afternoon, tension hung in the air. The sound of his angry shots carried over every lane. Finally, Pete had enough. His voice boomed across the range. "Any snipers here? Because apparently nobody else can hit the broadside of a barn today." Laughter rippled, but in the silence that followed, Maya set down her coffee and stood. The room stilled. Her boots crunched against the gravel as she walked toward the front. Jake turned, sneer already ready. "You're joking, right, lady? I've been shooting since middle school. This isn't something you just walk up and try." She ignored him, picked up a standard Remington 700 from the rack, checked the bolt, the scope, the weight in her hands. Her movements were practiced, deliberate. Dr. Webb stepped closer. "That's not zeroed for you, could throw you way off." "I'll adjust," she said. Pete crossed his arms. "What distance you thinking?" Maya lifted her chin. 4,200. Silence. It was like the canyon itself stopped breathing. Jake laughed, high and nervous. "That's ridiculous. Nobody shoots that far, not without specialized rifles, computers, a whole setup." But Maya didn't blink. "Can you set something up?" Within minutes, an orange cone sat on the ridge, a tiny speck of color nearly 3 miles away. She lay prone, rifle steady on its bipod. Breath slowed, world narrowed. The voices behind her faded into nothing. All that existed was distance, wind, gravity, the invisible math of survival. "Wind 10 to 12, Webb murmured. She adjusted, listened, waited, watched the way dust lifted across the slope, how grass bent in uneven gusts, how a raven tilted its wings against the air. Her finger found the trigger. The rifle cracked, recoil pressed into her shoulder. Silence stretched long enough to feel like a lifetime. Then Webb's voice, sharp with disbelief. "Impact, dead center," she hit it. The crowd erupted. Jake's face drained of color. Connor fumbled with his phone. Tyler whispered a curse under his breath. Maya worked the bolt calmly, collected the casing, cleared the weapon, as if it was nothing. But to them it wasn't nothing. It was impossible. Jake stepped forward, words trembling now. "That was how? What kind of training did you?" She froze at the question. A flicker of pain, a shadow of the past. Then her voice, quiet, final. "I should get home. Chores don't wait." The crowd parted as she walked away. Pete held the broken cone in his hands, eyes studying her like he'd seen something buried deep. Something dangerous, something real. And outside, as twilight spread across Wyoming, Maya climbed into her old truck. The weight was back, heavy, familiar. The weight of someone trying to be ordinary when ordinary was no longer an option. Her grandfather's words came back again. The most powerful weapon any warrior can possess is the courage to be exactly who they were meant to be. She wasn't sure yet if she had that courage. But she knew one thing. The quiet girl had just revealed herself, and the world would never look at her the same way again. Why didn't she just stay invisible? Why had she let them see? Maya drove back toward the ranch in silence, hands tight on the wheel, headlights catching the cold dust of Wyoming twilight. The orange cone still burned in her mind. Not the shot, not the mathematics, the breath, the squeeze, but the faces afterward. The awe, the questions, the recognition she never wanted. She'd come to Buffalo to disappear. And in one single trigger pull, she had undone 8 months of carefully built anonymity. When she turned down the gravel road toward her grandmother's ranch, the air smelled of wood smoke. The porch light was on, the way Rosa Chen always left it, waiting. A woman in her 70s who still moved like the land was stitched into her bones. Strong hands, soft voice, eyes sharp as winter sky. Maya killed the engine, sat in silence for a long moment. Through the windshield, she saw her grandmother rocking slowly in her chair, shawl wrapped tight, as if she already knew something weighed heavy on her granddaughter's chest. "Long day?" Rosa asked when Maya stepped onto the porch. "Something like that." "Eat first," Rosa said simply. "Talk later." Inside, the old house smelled of cedar and sage. Photos lined the walls. Her grandfather in faded uniform, family gatherings long past, ranch hands smiling in summer fields. Maya carried her rifle case upstairs, tucked it away in the back of the closet where shadows could hide it again. But she couldn't hide the weight. At dinner, Rosa ladled soup into bowls. Her hands trembled slightly, more from age than fear, but Maya noticed. She always noticed. "They came again," Rosa said softly, eyes fixed on the steam rising from her bowl. "Men from that development company, Westfield's people." Maya's spoon stilled. What did they want this time? "The same, pressure. Sell the 80 acres by the river," Rosa's voice lowered. "They said the county might reassess our property taxes, that the water rights were uncertain." It wasn't the words, it was the way she said them. Calm, measured, but beneath it, fatigue, worry that ate away in the dark. Maya set her spoon down. "You don't need to deal with them, I will." Rosa looked at her. "No, child, you came here to heal, not to fight. Healing takes quiet." Maya held her grandmother's gaze, and for the first time in months, she wasn't sure she could promise silence. Because earlier today she'd felt something awaken, something dangerous, something that had once been called ghost. By morning, word had already spread. The impossible shot at Copper Canyon. The quiet girl who had put a bullet through 3 miles of shifting wind and distance. In town, the whispers grew. At the diner, at the feed store, at the post office. Who was she? Where had she learned? Was it true? Maya kept her head down. Ranch work, fence repairs, early chores. But everywhere she went, eyes lingered too long. And then Clint Rhodes showed up. He arrived in a white truck, spotless logo of Westfield Ranch stenciled on the side. Compact man, wiry frame, eyes always calculating. He leaned on the fence while Maya repaired a gate, arms crossed, smile thin as paper. "Hell of a shot you made yesterday," he said casually. She didn't look up. Word travels fast. In a town like this, word's the only thing that moves faster than the wind. He paused, letting silence stretch. "Boss was impressed, wants to know more about you." "I'm not for hire." That's not what he meant. Rhodes' smile sharpened. "You live with Rosa Chen, good woman, hard-headed though, refuses to see opportunity when it's knocking." Maya finally looked at him, hammer still in her hand. Her eyes steady, unreadable. "What's your interest in our land?" "Just neighborhood awareness," Rhodes said smoothly. "Mr. Westfield likes to stay informed. Would be a shame if Rosa had to deal with disruptions in her quiet retirement." The threat was clear, wrapped in polite words but sharp enough to cut. Maya's knuckles tightened on the hammer, but her voice stayed calm. "Thanks for the message, I'll pass it along." He nodded as if satisfied. "You do that." When he left, dust trailing behind his truck, Maya stood at the fence line, breath slow and heavy. The ground beneath her boots felt unsteady. This wasn't about shooting anymore. This wasn't about healing. This was reconnaissance, a warning shot. That night she didn't sleep. She lay awake in the small upstairs room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks of the old house, the weight of silence pressing down. Her mind drifted where she didn't want it to go. Afghanistan, the Night Valley, the mission that had earned her the call sign, Ghost. They told her it was an honor. That disappearing into the dark, taking the shot no one else could, was courage. But in the quiet hours after, it never felt like honor. It felt like absence, like losing pieces of herself in every silence that followed the trigger pull. Maya turned, pressed her face into the pillow, but the memories wouldn't stop. The target, the breath, the certainty. Then the silence after, when even the night seemed to wait for her heartbeat to return. She left the bed before dawn, restless, walked out into the cold pasture, breath clouding in the air. Cows shifted quietly in the dark. The horizon began to glow faint orange. Her grandfather's words echoed again. The most powerful weapon any warrior can possess is the courage to be exactly who they were meant to be. But who was she meant to be now? A ranch hand, a granddaughter, or something else she had buried in the desert? By the next week, when she returned to Copper Canyon, the atmosphere had shifted. Not quiet anymore. Curious faces lingered, some familiar, some not, men who asked too many questions. Pete met her at the door, his eyes narrowed, voice low. "You sure you want to be here, Maya? What you did last week, it stirred things up." "I came here to shoot," she said simply. "You came here for peace," Pete replied, "but sometimes peace doesn't survive attention." She signed in anyway, Lane 20 as always. From across the range she felt eyes on her. Jake Morrison again, quieter now, watching from behind his scope. Tyler and Connor too, though their expressions had shifted from amusement to something like respect. But it wasn't them she noticed most. It was the stranger near the back, suit jacket out of place in the cold, phone in hand, watching too intently, writing something down. Maya adjusted her scope, breath steady. The rifle cracked. Metal rang downrange. She tried to lose herself in the rhythm again, but the truth pressed in with every shot. Her secret was out. And secrets like hers never stayed harmless. When she returned home, Rosa was waiting on the porch again. This time her voice was firm. "They'll keep coming, child. These men, they smell weakness in quiet people, but you and I, we are not weak." Maya lowered her head. "I didn't mean for this, I just wanted." Rosa reached out, touched her hand. "Wanting peace is not weakness, but peace often asks for guardians." Maya felt it then, the choice pressing down on her. The life she wanted, quiet, unseen, and the life that kept circling back, the one where silence became a weapon, where her hands carried the weight of decisions no one else wanted to make. She looked out across the ranch, the mountains rising in shadow. The wind whispered across the grass. Somewhere inside, ghosts stirred. And Maya knew peace was already slipping away. What happens when the quiet one refuses to stay quiet? The first real snow came 3 days later. Not much, just a thin layer across the pastures, dusting the old fence posts white. But it made everything quieter. The land muffled, the sky lower, the world hushed in that peculiar way only winter can manage. Maya walked the fence line with her coat zipped high, rifle slung across her back, though she wasn't hunting. She wasn't even sure why she'd brought it. Maybe habit. Maybe the weight steadied her. She kept scanning the distance. Not for coyotes, not for strays, for trucks, for strangers, for the kind of presence that didn't belong. Because ever since Clint Rhodes leaned on her fence, she felt watched. The ranch was supposed to be sanctuary, a place where hard work meant clear purpose, where a day's labor ended with sore muscles and quiet satisfaction. But now even the land felt unsettled, as though it too sensed something coming. When she returned to the house, Rosa was on the phone. Her grandmother's voice was calm but edged. "I told you before, Mr. Westfield, this land is not for sale, no matter what figure you put in front of me." Maya froze in the doorway listening. Rosa's tone shifted, sharper now. Threats don't impress me. We built this place with our hands. You want the river, go around it. She hung up, sat back in her chair. Her hand trembled slightly as she lifted her tea. Maya stepped inside. That was him. Rosa nodded. He's getting bolder. What did he say? Rosa hesitated. He asked if I liked sleeping at night, told me accidents happen, said taxes can be adjusted. Maya's jaw tightened. She wanted to slam her fist against the table, wanted to march into town and confront him, but she forced herself still. Instead, she said softly, he won't stop. Rosa met her eyes. Then neither will we. By the end of the week, the pressure was everywhere. Flyers in town promising jobs, growth, opportunity if Westfield's resort went forward. Men in polished trucks parking near the property line, surveying with tripods and cameras. And whispers that Rosa was being selfish, holding back progress, keeping the county poor. At the diner, Maya felt the shift. People who once smiled now looked away. Others offered quiet nods of support, but their eyes held worry. Everyone knew the fight was coming. One evening, Luis Ramirez stopped by. The rancher had served in Iraq, same as Maya, though different years. He stood on the porch, hat in his hands, face grim. Rhodes was asking about you, he said quietly. Maya frowned. What kind of asking? The kind that makes a man nervous. Wants to know where you served, who you served with, why you're back here now. Luis paused. He's not just curious, he's digging. Maya's stomach tightened. She thought of Jake at the range, asking the same question. What kind of military training did you have? She had deflected then. She couldn't deflect forever. Luis studied her. You don't owe me an answer, but if trouble comes, I need to know what I'm standing beside. She looked out over the snowlit pasture, voice low. I was a sniper, Army, 3 tour, Afghanistan. Luis's face didn't change, but his eyes did. Respect, and something else, recognition. They called me Ghost, she added quietly. The word hung between them like smoke. Luis nodded once. Explains a lot. Maya turned back to him, her voice steady but weighted. It's not a story I tell, not to anyone. And you don't need to, Luis said. But Rhodes, Westfield, they'll twist it, use it against you, against Rosa. That was the fear. Her past wasn't just history, it was a weapon waiting for the wrong hands. That night Maya dreamed, the same dream that had stalked her for years. Dark mountains, a valley below glowing faint under moonlight, her spotter's breath in her ear, calm but quick. The target moving across the ridge, carrying more than just a weapon, carrying lives in his wake. Her finger tightening, her heart slowing, the trigger breaking like glass. The silence after, always the silence after. She woke with her pulse racing, sweat cold on her back. For a long time she sat at the edge of the bed, hands over her face. Healing, that's what she'd come here for. But the truth was, healing didn't erase. It just buried. And now the ground was being dug up again, spade, by men who thought land was just profit and people just obstacles. The following Saturday, she returned to Copper Canyon. The parking lot was crowded, more than usual. Hunters, hobbyists, a few out-of-towners. But sprinkled among them were faces she didn't recognize, hard eyes, military haircuts, expensive optics. Not shooters, observers. Pete caught her eye as she signed in. He leaned across the counter, lowered his voice. Something's shifting, I don't like it. She nodded, lane 20 again. She set up slowly, deliberately, tried to lose herself in the mechanics. Bolt, breath, trigger, but the weight of the eyes never left. Halfway through her session, Jake approached. No arrogance this time, just curiosity tinged with something like unease. I looked it up, he said awkwardly. The shot you made, longest confirmed, is about that distance. Military snipers, special conditions, it's not normal. Maya didn't look up from her rifle. Maybe don't believe everything you read. But his next words froze her. They're saying you were military, that you were Ghost. Her hand stilled on the bolt. Is it true? Jake asked quietly. She looked at him, eyes flat. Go back to your lane, Jake. He hesitated, then nodded, walked away. But the damage was done. The rumor was out. That night Rosa sat by the fire, knitting in silence. Maya paced the room, restless. They know, she said finally. Rosa didn't look up. About Ghost. Maya stopped packing. You knew. Her grandmother's needles clicked softly. You think a woman doesn't notice when her granddaughter wakes screaming at night, or when she stares out windows like she's still overseas? Maya swallowed hard. Rosa finally met her eyes. You don't have to hide from me, not from family, but from them. Her voice hardened. Yes, because men like Westfield don't see people, they see leverage. Maya sat heavily in the chair opposite. If they use it against us. They will, Rosa said simply. That's what men like him do, but you are not just their story, you are your own. Maya looked into the fire, flames snapping quietly. She wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she could still choose who she was instead of being defined by shadows. But deep down she knew Ghost wasn't gone, Ghost was waiting. And soon, the choice wouldn't be hers anymore. The next morning, tire tracks cut across their land, fresh, wide. Maya followed them on foot, breath fogging in the cold. They led down toward the river, to the 80 acres Westfield wanted most. There in the snow she found markers, survey stakes, bright plastic flags fluttering in the wind. She crouched, touched one with her gloved hand. Anger flared sharp and hot. This wasn't negotiation anymore. This was trespass. She stood scanning the tree line. And in that moment, for the first time since coming home, she felt it fully. The calm, the focus, the weight settling into place like an old coat. Ghost wasn't just memory, Ghost was here. And the quiet girl on the ranch knew the fight was coming. What happens when the people you love become the leverage they use against you? The snow melted by midweek, leaving the pastures wet and heavy under the hooves of the cattle. Maya worked from dawn to dusk, fixing posts, hauling hay, mending what the winter winds had torn down. But every task felt like distraction. Her body moved, but her mind wouldn't quiet. Because the survey stakes weren't just stakes, they were a message, a line in the dirt saying, this is ours now. And she couldn't stop thinking. If they were bold enough to plant flags on our land, what comes next? The answer came faster than she expected. She was stacking feed sacks in the barn when Rosa called her name, voice strained. Maya dropped the bag and ran. Outside, a black SUV idled in the drive, exhaust curling into the cold. Clint Rhodes leaned against the hood, arms crossed, while another man stood by the passenger door. Bigger, harder, the kind of man who carried violence like a second skin. Rosa stood on the porch, chin high, shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her voice was calm but sharp. You're trespassing, Mr. Rhodes. Just a visit, he replied smoothly. Wanted to talk in person, face to face. Maya stepped closer, eyes flicking to the stranger. His stare was cold, assessing. What do you want? She asked. Rhodes smiled, thin and practiced. Simple, sell the 80 acres, we'll pay fair, more than fair, you can keep the rest. Live comfortable, everyone wins. And if we do? Maya asked. The bigger man stepped forward slightly, said nothing, didn't need to. Rosa's voice never wavered. This land isn't for sale. Rhodes sighed like a teacher disappointed in stubborn students. You're making it harder than it needs to be. Mr. Westfield doesn't like delays. He has investors waiting. Timelines. He's not a patient man. Not our problem, Maya said flatly. The smile vanished. Rhodes' eyes hardened. It will be. He turned, signaled to the other man, and slid back into the SUV. As it rolled away, Maya caught the stranger's gaze one last time. It was a look she recognized, the way predators marked prey. When the vehicle disappeared down the road, Rosa finally exhaled. They won't stop. No, Maya said quietly, they won't. That night Maya sat at the kitchen table long after Rosa had gone to bed. A map spread before her, the property lines, the river bend, the ridge where the survey stakes had appeared. Her mind worked the problem like a mission. Angles, sight lines, entry points. She hated herself for it, hated how natural it felt, but part of her couldn't stop. Because if they came again, and she knew they would, she couldn't meet them with just stubborn words. Her hands clenched the pencil until it snapped. She shoved the map aside, buried her face in her hands. I came here to heal, not to fight. But healing had never been her luxury, only survival. The next day she drove into town for supplies. Heads turned when she walked into the hardware store. Conversations dipped. Whispers trailed her down the aisles. She heard Fragment, that's her, the sniper ghost. She kept her head down, picked up fence wire, nails, feed buckets. But when she set them on the counter, the clerk, a woman she'd known since childhood, hesitated. You should be careful, Maya, the woman said softly. Westfield's men, they don't like being embarrassed, and folks are saying you embarrassed them. Maya forced a thin smile, paid cash, left without another word. Outside, a man leaned against her truck. Not Clint, another, clean-shaven, suit jacket, city shoes that didn't belong on gravel. He smiled as she approached. Miss Chen, he said politely. Name Harris, I represent Mr. Westfield. She didn't respond. I want to be clear, he continued, tone light but sharp underneath. This isn't personal, it's business. The land is vital to the project. Selling now avoids unpleasantness later. Maya opened her truck door. Move. He leaned in slightly. Your grandmother's health isn't what it used to be. Stress can be unkind. Something in Maya snapped. Her hand shot out, grabbed his tie, yanked him close enough to see the steel in her eyes. Listen carefully, she said, voice low, steady. If you or your boss ever threaten my grandmother again, I won't waste words next time. She shoved him back, climbed into the truck, slammed the door, drove away with her pulse hammering in her ears. Through the rear view she saw him watching, still smiling. That evening, Rosa noticed the tension in her granddaughter's shoulders. What happened in town? She asked. Maya shook her head, nothing worth repeating. Rosa studied her. You can't fight them the way you fought over there. This is different. Is it? Maya's voice was sharper than she intended. Because it feels the same. Men with power using fear to take what isn't theirs. People caught in the middle. The only difference is they wear suits instead of rifles. Rosa's expression softened. I don't want you lost to that world again. I lost my husband to war. I won't lose you to it too. Maya lowered her head. I don't know if I have a choice. 2 nights later, the first real shot was fired. Not a bullet, a warning. Maya woke to the sound of barking. The ranch dogs frantic, snarling at the dark. She grabbed her rifle, ran to the porch. Headlights cut across the fields. A truck tearing down the fence line, smashing posts as it went. She raised the rifle instinctively, breath steady, crosshairs tracking the bouncing taillights. Her finger tightened. Then she stopped, pulled the rifle down. The truck disappeared into the night, leaving wreckage in its wake. Rosa appeared behind her, robe pulled tight. Why didn't you shoot? Maya's voice was hoarse. Because once I start, I won't stop. They stood in silence, the cold biting their faces. The fence lay broken in the dark. And Maya knew, the line had already been crossed. The next morning, Lewis arrived, saw the damage, swore under his breath. They're testing you, he said, seeing how far they can push. Maya nodded grimly. Then they're about to find out. She walked back to the house, pulled her rifle case from the closet, ran her fingers over the worn wood of her grandfather's Remington. It felt heavier now, not because of the steel, because of the decision it carried. She sat on the edge of her bed, weapon across her lap, staring at the sunlight creeping across the floor. She had wanted to be Maya Chen, ranch hand, quiet granddaughter. But the world was forcing her back into Ghost. And Ghost didn't ask permission. Ghost didn't hesitate. Ghost acted. What happens when you realize the person you've been trying to bury is the only one who can save what matters most? The wrecked fence still lay in the pasture, posts splintered, wire coiled like broken ribs across the snow. Maya worked silently, replacing one post at a time, hands raw against the cold. Every strike of the hammer felt louder than it should. Lewis helped in silence. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer comfort. He knew when words weren't useful. When they finished, he leaned on the new post, looking out across the white field. "They'll come again," he said quietly. Maya nodded, throat tight. "They want you rattled, want you reacting." She looked at him, eyes hard. "I'm not rattled." But the truth was she was, not with fear, with something else. Something she'd promised herself she'd never feel again, that sharp edge of readiness. That old focus sliding back into her veins like ice. Lewis saw it. "Ghost, isn't it?" She froze. "I heard it from an old buddy," he continued carefully. "Said there was a sniper out there, invisible. No one ever saw you, just the work you left behind. Ghost." Maya looked away, fists clenched. Lewis lowered his voice. "Maybe that's who you need to be now." She shook her head almost violently. "No, that part of me, it killed too much, cost too much." He didn't argue, just nodded. "Then figure out what part of her you can live with, because whether you like it or not, she's here." That night Rosa cooked stew, humming softly in the kitchen. The house smelled warm, safe. But Maya sat at the table staring at her rifle case, untouched beside her chair. Her grandmother noticed. "You've been different since the fence." Maya didn't answer. "You carry yourself like you're waiting for something, like you already know it's coming." Maya finally spoke, voice low. "They won't stop. They'll push until you give in, or until I make them stop." Rosa set the ladle down, turned. "And what does that mean?" Maya swallowed hard. "It means ghost." For a moment, the house was silent except for the crackle of the fire. Rosa's face didn't flinch, but her eyes filled with something between sorrow and fear. "I prayed that part of you was gone," she said softly. "Because every time you went over there, every letter I got, I worried Ghost would come home instead of Maya." Maya's voice broke. "I tried, Grandma. I tried to leave her behind. But she's the only one they'll listen to." Rosa stepped closer, cupped her granddaughter's face with both hands. "Listen to me. You are not just Ghost. You are Maya Chen, my granddaughter, the girl who used to fall asleep in the hayloft with dirt on her face. Don't lose her. Not again." Maya closed her eyes. Tears pressed hot against her lids, but she didn't let them fall. "I don't know if I can keep them separate," she whispered. "Then don't," Rosa said. "Be both. Let Ghost protect. Let Maya feel. Don't let either one erase the other." Later, unable to sleep, Maya sat alone in the barn. The smell of hay and old wood filled the air. She pulled her grandfather's Remington from the case, ran her fingers along the worn stock. Every scar in the wood told a story. Every dent was history. She checked the bolt, cleaned the barrel, oiled the action. The motions were familiar, comforting, but dangerous too. Each step pulled her further from the ranch hand she wanted to be and closer to the sniper she swore she'd buried. As the cloth slid along the metal, her mind slipped back again. Afghanistan, a rooftop. Her spotter whispering, wind shifting, 2 miles left. Her breathing slowed, her heart steadied. The world narrowed to a single target across a dusty street. She pulled the trigger, and another life ended. When she blinked, she was back in the barn, the smell of hay replacing cordite. Her hands trembled. Ghost wasn't just memory, Ghost was muscle, reflex, and muscle didn't forget. 2 days later, the intimidation escalated. She was driving back from town when she saw it, a dead steer lying twisted near the river fence line. Its eyes already gone, ribcage slashed open. a warning left to rot in the snow. Her hands tightened on the wheel until her knuckles went white. She pulled over, knelt beside the animal. Flies already buzzed despite the cold. A single tire track led away toward the tree line. She stood slowly, jaw clenched. This wasn't pressure anymore. This was declaration. When she returned to the ranch, Rosa saw it in her face. "What did they do?" her grandmother asked. Maya's voice was low, sharp. "They crossed the line." That night she prepared. Not loudly, not with spectacle, quietly, methodically. She retrieved her pack from the attic, the one she hadn't touched since leaving the army. Inside were tools she hoped never to see again: a rangefinder, a weather meter, a small notebook filled with calculations written in a younger, harder hand. She laid them out on the table. Each one was a step backward or maybe forward. She couldn't tell anymore. Louis came by late, found her sitting there. His eyes scanned the gear. He nodded once. "So it's happening." Maya didn't answer. "You're not alone in this," he said. "You've got people here who won't let them take your grandmother's land." She looked up, weary. "This isn't their fight." "Then let us make it ours," he replied. "Because Ghost might win a battle, but Maya keeps a home." She stared at him, torn. Part of her wanted to push him away, keep everyone safe by standing alone. The other part, the ranch girl, not the sniper, wanted to believe him. But deep down she knew, Ghost didn't share battles, Ghost ended them. The following evening, headlights appeared at the end of their drive. A truck, not Clint, not Harris's, bigger, heavier. Maya stood on the porch, rifle in hand, watching as it slowed. The engine idled. The driver's window rolled down. A voice called out, "Nice place you got here, shame if it burned." Then the truck roared away, gravel spitting under its tires. Rosa came to the door behind her. "You can't let them push us out." Maya lowered the rifle, eyes following the disappearing taillights. "No," she said quietly, "I won't." She turned, the decision written across her face. Ghost was awake now. And Ghost wasn't going back to sleep. How far would you go to protect the ground beneath your feet? The morning after the truck circled their drive, Maya rose before dawn. The ranch was still dark, the only sound the low hum of the cattle in the pasture. She dressed in silence, heavy coat, boots, gloves, and slipped into the barn where her rifle waited. The air smelled of oil and hay. Her grandfather's Remington lay across the workbench, the wood polished, the bolt smooth. She picked it up, felt its weight settle into her arms, familiar, inevitable. She carried it outside, stepping into the brittle cold. The horizon glowed faintly pink. She walked past the corral, past the outbuildings, toward the ridge above the river, the same ridge where survey stakes had been planted. She lay prone in the snow, breath steadying, eyes scanning the valley below. The rifle rested against her shoulder. Through the scope, the world narrowed. She wasn't looking for targets. Not yet. She was watching. That was the first rule Ghost had lived by: patience. And patience was the only language predators understood. By noon, she had her answer. A white truck rolled slowly along the far property line, 2 men inside, cameras mounted on the dash. They weren't hunting. They weren't sightseeing. They were documenting. Maya adjusted her scope. The truck stopped, doors opened. The men stepped out, walking the fence with notepads and tape measures. One of them hammered another stake into the ground. Her finger found the trigger. The old instinct surged like lightning, a whisper in her veins that said, "Now." But she didn't fire. Instead, she shifted crosshairs an inch to the left, a rusted signpost. She exhaled, squeezed. The shot cracked across the valley. The bullet tore the corner of the sign into splinters. Both men froze, looked around wildly. One dropped his tape measure. They scrambled back into the truck, slammed the doors, peeled away down the road. Maya lowered the rifle. Her hands were steady, too steady. It wasn't just a warning to them. It was a warning to herself. Ghost was awake. That evening, Lewis came by with a jug of kerosene for Rosa's heater. He saw the rifle leaned by the door, the hard set of Maya's shoulders. "You started," he said. Maya didn't deny it. They were on our land again. Lewis nodded, jaw tight. Word spreading. Folks in town are nervous. Westfield's offering payouts. Some are taking them. Rosa, sitting by the fire, spoke without looking up. He buys loyalty the way a man buys cattle, but loyalty bought is loyalty that won't hold. Lewis leaned forward. The thing is, Maya, the more you fight, the more they'll push. They won't stop with threats. You know that. Maya's eyes hardened. Then I'll stop them first. The words hung heavy in the room. Rosa looked up at her granddaughter, not angry, not fearful, but deeply sad. Just don't lose yourself, child. Land isn't worth a soul. But Maya didn't answer, because deep down, she wasn't sure her soul had been whole for a long time. 3 nights later, the retaliation came. She woke to the sound of breaking glass. The barn. She grabbed her rifle, sprinted across the yard, snow crunching under her boots. A shadow moved inside, flashlight beams sweeping across the hay bales, searching. She crouched by the door, breath slow, listening. The man moved clumsily, not trained, looking for something quick, maybe fuel, maybe fire. Maya's voice cut the dark. "You're trespassing." The beam froze. She stepped inside, rifle raised. The man turned, startled, a rough face, mid-30s, jacket marked with Westfield's ranch logo. His hand twitched toward his belt. "Don't," she said coldly. For a long moment, the only sound was the horse shifting in its stall. Then the man dropped his hand, backed away slowly. "This isn't your fight," he muttered. Maya's eyes narrowed. "It became my fight the second you came for my family." He stumbled toward the door, vanished into the night. Maya lowered the rifle, pulse steady but heavy. She hadn't pulled the trigger, but she knew. Next time she might not stop herself. The following day, Sheriff Whitaker drove up the ranch road. His cruiser crunched over the snow, lights off, dust trailing behind. A big man with thinning hair, weathered face, and the look of someone too tired to pretend anymore. He sat at Rosa's kitchen table, hat in his hands. "Westfield's got half the county in his pocket," he said bluntly. "Investors, lawyers, even a few deputies. My hands are tied tighter than I'd like." Rosa stirred sugar into her tea. "And the other half of the county." "They're scared," Whitaker admitted. "Most folks don't want to pick a side. Can't blame them. Money talks, and Westfield's got more of it than anyone." Maya leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "So what are you saying, Sheriff? That we're on our own?" Whitaker looked at her, tired, eyes steady. "I'm saying don't give him an excuse. If you cross a line, he'll bury you in court before you can breathe." Maya's jaw tightened. "And if he crosses a line?" "Then I'll do what I can," he said quietly. But the way he said it told her what she already knew. It won't be enough. That night Maya walked the river alone. The moonlit water moved slow, black and cold. She crouched on the bank, staring at the reflection of the stars. She thought of her spotter again. Afghanistan, a man who once told her, "The silence after the shot is louder than the shot itself." He'd been right. And the silence of this place, the land, the river, her grandmother's ranch, it was worth more than any contract Westfield could wave in her face. She picked up a stone, tossed it into the current, watched it disappear. If Westfield wanted a war, he would find one, but not the kind fought with lawyers and surveys. The kind fought in shadows. The kind Ghost had been born for. The next week was preparation. She mapped the land in detail, sight lines, cover, approach routes. She moved quietly at night, setting up points she could watch from without being seen. She didn't tell Rosa. She didn't tell Lewis. She kept her pack ready by the door. Ammunition counted, optics cleaned. Range book updated with every calculation, wind, drift, temperature, humidity. It wasn't just practice, it was transformation. And with each step, Maya felt herself slipping further from the girl who used to fix fences and haul hay. Further into ghost. On Thursday night, headlights appeared again on the ridge. 2 trucks, engines idling, men stepping out. Maya lay prone on the hill above, scope trained on them. She watched as they planted more stakes, spray-painted lines in the snow. Her finger tightened on the trigger. 1 shot, that's all it would take. The noise of the trucks would cover it. They'd never know where it came from. Fear would do the rest. Her breath slowed, her heart steadied. Then she heard Rosa's voice in her head. Don't lose yourself. She exhaled, lifted her finger, lowered the rifle. Instead, she reached into her pack, pulled out her phone, snapped 3 photos through the scope, faces, plates, evidence. Proof they couldn't deny. The trucks drove off, leaving their marks behind. Maya stayed prone in the snow long after, rifle cold against her cheek. Because she knew this wasn't the end. It was only the test. The real move hadn't even started yet. What happens when silence stops being protection and becomes the weapon itself? The storm broke on a Friday night. The sky was low and heavy, clouds pressing down like the land itself was holding its breath. Rosa had gone to bed early, worn down from another week of calls and letters from Westfield's lawyers. Maya sat at the table in the dark, rifle case beside her, the fire burning low. She hadn't touched her food, she hadn't spoken in hours. Because she felt it, in her bones, in the stillness outside, something was coming. She rose quietly, slid the rifle case over her shoulder, pulled on her coat. She kissed her grandmother's forehead as she slept, whispered, "Stay inside." Then she stepped into the cold. At the ridge above the river she waited. Prone in the snow, breath controlled, scope sweeping the valley. Every sound mattered. The distant crack of ice in the river, the rustle of wind through bare branches. And then headlights. 2 trucks, black, no logos, moving slow down the ranch road. Maya steadied her scope. 4 men, heavy jackets, weapons slung, not surveyors, not contractors, enforcers. Her jaw tightened. They were coming for more than land tonight. The truck stopped near the barn. Doors opened. Men fanned out, flashlights cutting across the dark. One carried a gas can. Maya's pulse slowed. Her body moved into rhythm, scope, breath, trigger. 1 shot would change everything. She hesitated. Rosa's voice echoed, "Don't lose yourself." So instead she shifted her crosshairs. Gas can, she exhaled, squeezed. The round cracked the night. The can exploded into flame, spilling fire across the snow. The men shouted, stumbling back. One dropped his flashlight. They scrambled, scanning the dark. "Where the hell did that come from?" one barked. Another raised his rifle blindly, firing into the trees. Bullets sparked off rocks, wide and panicked. Maya stayed calm, shifted, fired again. This time the beam of a flashlight shattered, plunging them deeper into darkness. "Sniper!" someone yelled. Panic rippled through them. They dove behind the trucks, shouting orders that broke into chaos. Maya worked the bolt, chambered another round but didn't fire. She didn't need to. Fear was doing the work for her. Through the scope she watched them retreat, shoving equipment back into the trucks, cursing, shouting. Within minutes, engines roared and tires spun, both vehicles tearing down the road, taillights shrinking into the night. The pasture was left in silence again, fire hissing in the snow where the gas had burned out. Maya lowered the rifle slowly, her breath fogged in the cold. Ghost had acted, but not to kill, to warn. And that was worse for them. Because now they knew she could, anytime she chose. By morning, word had spread. The men who had fled the ranch told stories in town, about the shot that came from nowhere, about the fire, about the ghost in the dark. Maya went into town for supplies, head low, but whispers followed her, some fearful, some reverent. "She's dangerous. She's what this town needs. Westfield won't let it go." At the diner, Lewis slid into the booth across from her. His voice was low. They'll hit harder next time. Maya stirred her coffee. Then I'll be ready. He studied her. You didn't kill them. She shook her head. Not yet. Lewis nodded slowly. That's what makes you different, but it also makes you vulnerable. Westfield doesn't play by rules. She looked out the window, snow falling in soft flakes. Her voice was flat. Neither does Ghost. That evening, Rosa confronted her. I heard the shots, she said. Heard the dogs barking. You scared them off. Maya set her jaw. I did what I had to. Rosa stepped closer, searching her granddaughter's face. Did you kill anyone? Maya hesitated. No. Relief flickered in her grandmother's eyes, but only for a moment. That's not the point, child. The point is you're becoming who you were over there. Maya's voice cracked. I never stopped being her. I just tried to hide it. Rosa's hands trembled as she gripped her granddaughter's shoulders. Then promise me something. Promise me you'll remember why you're fighting. This isn't about revenge. It's about home, about keeping what's ours safe. Don't let Ghost swallow Maya whole. Maya closed her eyes, nodding. But deep down, she feared it was already too late. 2 days later, Westfield himself came. Not in person, men like him rarely dirtied their own boots. But his envoy, Harris, the one with the city shoes, returned. He arrived at the ranch in broad daylight, a smirk plastered across his face, carrying a folded document. He knocked on the door, unbothered by the dog snarling at his heels. Rosa opened it, but Maya stood behind her, rifle leaning against the wall. Miss Chen, Harris said smoothly, you've made your point, quite dramatically I might add, but let's not confuse theatrics with inevitability. He unfolded the document, tapped it with a manicured finger. This is a court order. You're being sued for obstruction of development, unlawful discharge of a firearm, and endangering county workers. Maya's eyes narrowed. County workers, those were armed men with gas cans. Harris smiled thinly. Allegedly, what the court will see is your word against ours, and the county prefers progress. Rosa's voice was sharp. You can tell Mr. Westfield this land isn't for sale. Not now, not ever. Harris's smile didn't falter. Then I'll see you in court. He folded the paper neatly, tucked it back into his coat, and turned to leave. But at the truck he paused, looked back. His voice carried, smooth and venomous. By the time this is over, Miss Chen, Ghost won't save you, she'll bury you. The truck rolled away, leaving tire tracks in the snow. Maya stood in the doorway, fists clenched, breath trembling. For the first time she realized this wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was war on two fronts. One fought with rifles, one fought with papers. And she would have to fight both. That night she sat alone in the barn again. The firelight flickered against the wood beams, casting long shadows. Her rifle rested across her knees. She thought about everything Rosa had said, about Lewis's warnings, about the sheriff's weary advice. And she realized something. Ghost wasn't just a sniper. Ghost wasn't just the woman who pulled impossible shots in faraway wars. Ghost was survival, the instinct to adapt, to outthink, to endure when no one else could. And if she could harness that without losing herself, maybe she could do more than fight. Maybe she could win. But outside, in the darkness beyond the ranch, headlights appeared again. Not one truck this time, 3. Engines idling, men stepping out, their silhouettes sharp against the snow. And Maya knew the final night had come. The quiet was over. The storm was here. And Ghost was ready. What do you do when the storm you've tried to outrun finally stands at your door? The headlights stayed on the ridge, unmoving, engines idling in the dark. 3 trucks, doors opening, men climbing out. Maya counted 6. Heavy coats, rifles slung, flashlights cutting the snow. She lay prone in the pasture, rifle pressed against her shoulder, crosshairs sweeping. Breath calm, heartbeat slow. Ghost was fully awake now, steady and cold. But behind her the porch light glowed. Rosa was inside. Rosa, who had held this land with nothing but stubborn love for 60 years. Rosa, who believed dignity wasn't loud, wasn't violent, it simply endured. Maya exhaled. If she killed these men, the land would stay safe, but the cost would bury her forever. If she let them win, the land would be gone, and Rosa's spirit would break. The choice was unbearable. The men spread out, flashlights sweeping the barn, the house, the corrals. One carried another gas can. Another raised bolt cutters to the gate. Maya adjusted her scope. She could see every detail, the frost on their breath, the twitch of nervous hands, the arrogance of men who thought the night belonged to them. Her finger found the trigger. The gas can again, she squeezed. The shot cracked like thunder. The can burst, flames climbing high, lighting the night in a furious orange glow. The men shouted, dove for cover. One screamed, "Sniper, she's here." Maya shifted, fired again. A flashlight shattered. Darkness swallowed them. She worked the bolt, chambered, aimed, fired. Another round slammed into the dirt inches from a man's boot. He dropped his rifle, scrambling backward, terror flooding his face. They fired blindly into the trees, shots echoing wild and desperate. Maya stayed low, patient, her scope steady as if the chaos around her didn't exist. One by one she dismantled them, not with blood, with fear. A shot to the ground near their feet. A shot to a truck tire exploding rubber, sending sparks across the snow. A shot to a metal fence post, ringing like a warning bell. The men were shouting now, panicked, tripping over each other. "We can't fight this, she'll kill us all." Maya let them believe it. Because Ghost didn't need to kill. Ghost needed them to know she could. Within minutes, the trucks roared to life, tires spinning, engines howling. The men piled in, shouting, cursing, scrambling to escape. The convoy tore down the road, tail lights shrinking until the dark swallowed them whole. Silence fell over the pasture again. Smoke curled from the burning gas, sparks drifting into the night sky. Maya lowered her rifle. Her breath came steady, but her hands trembled now, not from fear, from release. It was over. She walked back to the house, boots crunching in the snow. Rosa was waiting on the porch, shawl pulled tight, eyes glistening. "You didn't kill them," her grandmother said softly. Maya shook her head. "I didn't need to." Rosa reached out, touched her arm. "That's the difference, child. That's what keeps you Maya." For the first time in months, Maya let herself breathe. Really breathe. The next morning, Sheriff Whitaker drove up the ranch road. Dust rose behind his cruiser, lights flashing faintly against the pale winter sky. He stepped out, hands on his hips, surveying the blackened ground where the gas had burned. "Heard there was trouble last night." Maya stood by the fence, rifle slung across her shoulder. "You heard right." The sheriff studied her, then nodded. "Can't say I'm sorry they got scared off, but you know this won't end here. Westfield'll try another angle, court, county board, maybe higher." Maya nodded. "Let him." Whitaker raised a brow. "You sound awful sure." Her voice was calm. "Because fear's a language he understands, and now he knows we can speak it too." The sheriff gave a slow, tired smile. "Just be careful, Chen. You fight too long, you start to forget what you're fighting for." Maya looked past him. Out at the land, the river shining in the morning sun, the pasture stretching wide, Rosa's house standing steady against the horizon. "I haven't forgotten," she said quietly. In the weeks that followed, Westfield didn't return. His lawyers filed papers, threatened lawsuits, sent letters, but the trucks never came back. His men never crossed the fence again. The town whispered, of course. Some called her dangerous, others called her hero, but Maya didn't listen. She fixed fences, fed cattle, drove into town for feed, just another ranch hand. Except she was. Because at night, when the house was quiet and the land lay still, she'd sit by the window with her rifle across her lap, watching, waiting, not because she wanted to, because she knew she had to. Peace wasn't something you were given. Peace was something you protected. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Wind River Mountains, Rosa joined her on the porch. They sat in silence, the air cool, the world painted gold. Finally, Rosa spoke. "You were right, you know." Maya looked over. "About what?" "That ghost never left. She was always here. But maybe she doesn't have to be your curse. Maybe she can be your shield." Maya looked down at her hands. Strong hands, steady hands. Hands that had held both life and death. "Maybe," she whispered. They sat together until the stars came out, the land stretching endless and quiet around them. And for the first time, Maya felt something close to peace. Not the fragile kind that shatters at the first sound. The kind you build with your own hands. The kind you defend with everything you are. The town would go on whispering. Westfield would go on scheming. The world would go on testing her. But Maya Chen, the quiet girl in faded jeans, was no longer hiding. She was Ghost and she was Maya both. And when the world asked who will stand, she already knew the answer. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.